Welcome back to Election 2024, a Cheddar Politics special. I'm Dave Briggs here at the New York Stock Exchange. It's been referred to as the TikTok election. A front page New York Times story reads, "The election has taken over TikTok." A recent study found that nearly half of Americans 18 to 29 use TikTok to keep up with politics. Harry Sisson is no stranger to that trend. His political posts have gathered 1.3 million TikTok followers. He joins us now at the exchange. It's incredible to see the rise of politics on TikTok. Yeah. How have you seen, Harry, that conversation, the amount of political content surge?
Yeah, I think that in this election, more so than any other election before, as you kind of just put, it is the TikTok election. We're seeing more Americans out there, everyday Americans getting on TikTok and getting on social media and making their voices heard. A lot of people are getting involved in social media, and you're just hearing a lot of different perspectives. Now, that has its pros and cons, but I'd say overall, it's a good thing. I'm glad we're hearing from more people on social media.
What are the pros?
The pros are kind of what I just mentioned, more people being involved, more people making their voices heard. A lot of people, I think, like historically have thought that politics is kind of like this dirty secret that you don't talk about at the dinner table. Now it's kind of changed. Now people are being open and talking about what they believe. Now the cons are that sometimes you get some lunatics, you get some crazy people putting out their views, and unfortunately in social media, shock value can get a lot of traction, and thus those views kind of get some oxygen.
And do you see that, the crazy views on both sides of the aisle?
100%.
Okay.
100%.
That's like, good to point out.
Yeah, I know. It's both sides of the aisle. So like, I'm obviously a proud Democrat, proud Kamala Harris supporter. But when I see somebody on the far left making a lunatic point about the Republicans or just anything generally, I'm like, we can't associate that with that. We have to be our own party, our own people, and kind of push away the crazies. We got to get back to a little bit more of a moderate government, I think.
I am politically independent. I have never seen a more divisive political environment in my lifetime. Is that what you see on TikTok?
It is very divisive. It's very divided right now on social media, and it's polarized for a number of reasons. I think polarization has gone up for a long time, and that's really been embodied on social media.
Does social media cause that in some part?
100%. I definitely say that social media plays into polarization. I mean, again, you know, there's a lot of misinformation, and when you have misinformation like, oh, Joe Biden is creating hurricanes, that that can create a lot of people being like, oh, Harry is this, or Joe Biden is this, or your average Democrat is this. And so if we kind of like just get back to focusing on the facts, focusing on the truth, we'll be better for it, especially on social media as well.
Okay, as you mentioned, you do lean left. You had videos with President Biden, with former President Barack Obama.
President.
How are you, man?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I hear a lot of great things about you.
I hear a lot of great things about you too.
Folks, it looks like President Obama is getting ready to help get out the vote.
Harry, why don't you let me handle this one?
You got it.
So I'm about to go out to campaign because the stakes couldn't be higher in this election.
Real quickly, what was that like?
It was amazing. Obama was fantastic, probably the most intelligent person I've ever met in my entire life. And when I met President Biden, he's just this really good moral man. And whether it was on camera or off camera, he was really kind. He was asking me about my family, my story, like how I got to be involved in politics. And he had to be pulled away from his staff. He wanted to keep talking, you know? So he was a great guy.
On TikTok, does the conversation lean left? Does it tilt right? Is it both?
It's kind of hard to say. I've seen some studies saying that it's more leans right now in terms of the political swing. But at least from my personal experience, I get a little bit of both. I kind of see it straight down the middle.
And what about generations? We think it's mostly Gen Z. Is that the way you see it?
Well, yeah. I mean, just looking at my data when it comes to my following, the overwhelming majority are 18 to 29. They're young voters or just young people generally, even people under the age of 18 who might be voters either this election cycle or next. It's mostly a young people platform, I'd say.
You talk about your platforms. You're on all platforms. You're also on TikTok. You're on Instagram and X, Twitter. But you have 5 times the following of your Twitter following on TikTok, 10x what you have on Instagram. Why is that?
I think that platforms
same content, right?
Yeah, same content for the most part. I'd say that platforms like Instagram, for example, are not all that politically driven. You know, Meta has recently said that they're not pushing Instagram or political content on Instagram, which I, of course, disagree with. Whereas TikTok, I think that conversation is more ripe and has more potential to grow. And on X and Twitter, I think, like, personally, I have a lot of beef with X and Twitter right now and Elon Musk. But, you know, I think that's a good place to have some open conversation. It just needs some tweaks, I'd say.
Okay, a couple of things I want to unpack there. Meta, you don't believe. What do you think is really going on?
I mean, I think that I think Mark Zuckerberg, like, testified in front of Congress a bunch of times about politics and Facebook and Instagram. And I think probably behind the scenes, it's like, yeah, I just really don't want to do that anymore. So they stop pushing political content, so maybe they're out of that equation.
You have some issues with X, formerly known as Twitter.
Yes.
Elon Musk, of course, owns it. He is also the world's richest man, and he has arguably the world's biggest megaphone at the moment. How is it impacting social media as a whole and X?
Not in a great way. I mean, certainly not in a great way. Elon Musk, he's accomplished a lot of amazing things with many of his different companies, but he spreads a lot of misinformation, especially when it comes to immigration, for example. He put out a tweet recently citing these numbers that came from the humanitarian parole program, saying all of these undocumented migrants are coming in. It's like, no, those are actually legal immigrants who are being vetted at the border. Then they come in and work a job for a couple of years, and then they leave the country or can apply for further stay. I just hate the misinformation that Elon Musk puts out, and that's why he's one of the most community-noted accounts on Twitter, or X.
I'm curious how you think the endorsement of Taylor Swift kind of counters that. There was at least the notion that this would ride a wave of young voters. Have you seen it matter?
Yeah, for sure. I think that, there are a lot of young people who are not tuned into politics. So when you see someone like Taylor Swift, who is the biggest superstar on the earth, saying, hey, I'm voting for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz because of reproductive rights, LGBTQ plus rights, whatever it might be, that gets people interested. And I've seen a lot of it, especially young women saying, well, hey, this is what Taylor Swift said. Maybe I got to look into this a little bit more.
Do you think she'll get off the sideline in the last couple of weeks and say something else?
I certainly hope so. I think there should be like a Taylor Swift, Kamala Harris kind of joint rally or concert, something like that. I think that'd be great. So
got a couple of shows left in New Orleans and Indianapolis. I can't help but wonder. The other big question, and the biggest question, with your age, with the youth voters turnout. 2020, it was 50%. That was way up 11% from the 4 years prior. Will it continue to go up? Because if it doesn't, it will be massively consequential.
Yes. If it doesn't, that'll hurt the Democrats a lot. And that makes our election chances much more difficult. But if it does, if it continues to go up and maybe we even get it up 5%, that could be destructive for Trump and his campaign. So, we're doing everything we can to get out the young voters. And in my personal view, I think young voters will get out at higher rates than they did in 2020.
Young voters and old, there is a massive gender gap in this country.
Yeah.
When it comes to young voters, it's 70 to 23 in favor of Kamala Harris. But Harvard says, in terms of men, only 53% support Kamala Harris. Why?
Look, I think that the Republicans and Donald Trump have been very successful at one thing, which is telling young, straight, white men that they are oppressed, that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are trying to come for you, that they are trying to make your life harder. Now, of course, that's not true. But by targeting these young men, there's been that political swing. And there's also been this kind of like alpha male trend on social media where folks like Andrew Tate have been telling young men, oh, eat red meat, disrespect women and go lift 12 hours a day. And it's like, my personal view, I don't think that's what it means to be a man. But, they're certainly playing into the emotions of young men. And unfortunately, we've seen that swing.
All right, our thanks to Harry Sisson. Make sure you follow him on all the platforms, X, Instagram, and of course, TikTok, Harry J. Sisson. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.